Okay, here we go. This is Marx chapter 2. And surprisingly, I'm getting through this stuff pretty quickly. I'm kind of proud of myself. The videos this week are shorter. Okay. If you went into chapter 2, so what I mentioned in the previous video was that curiously, Marx is not talking about the role of government. But we know that um, corporations can only be prominent, like the bourgeoisie can only pull off what they can pull off because they have the support and power of government behind them. Because government also has military, government also writes the laws, and so they can criminalize their opponents, they can assassinate and execute their competition and their opponents. And so we come to chapter 2, and this is where the shoe drops, so to speak. He describes what a communist is. Now, you might think that a communist is anyone who's a socialist, right? Anyone who subscribes to Marx's way of thinking would be a communist, and you would be wrong. Okay, and I quote from the study guide, it's on the study guide as well. The communists are the most advanced and resolute section of the working class parties of every country, pushes forward all others, and they have the advantage of clearly understanding the line of march, the conditions, and the ultimate general results of the proletarian movement. What are they? Communists are the government. Okay, they're not proletariat. They're not down in the trenches working side by side, shoulder to shoulder with all the workers. No, the communists are the ones who tell the workers what they're supposed to do. They tell workers what's up because they're smarter than everybody else, okay? They know where the country needs to go. They know where the world has to go, and they are not afraid to tell you what that is, okay? And so the reason why Marx never talks about the role of government in enabling and protecting the bourgeoisie and allowing them to get away with all the crap that they have done is because he wants to be the new government. And if you listen to any Marx, particularly any professor, what do they want? They want the power and the authority to be able to order everyone else around. It's just so obvious. And obviously, if you are a Marxist, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like all these idiots out there, they have to be told what to do, right? Because they're not smart enough. Like people like me, a capitalist, a free market person. What? How dare you have choices to make the choices that you want on your own terms? How dare you? And you have to do it my way. And that basically is what a communist is. And remember, government is power. Government power is coercion, forcing people to do things in a way that some people say that it has to be done. And it gets better. Um, Abolition of private property. So, and he says, oh, no, 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 but it's only bourgeoisie property, not your property. Your property is okay. But as we can see time and time again in all of these communistic, kind of socialistic kind of countries, private property kind of disappears, right? So if they're actually able to have their way, government owns everything. You can kind of see it a little bit here in the United States, where more and more private corporations are under the control of government, fascistic relationship. But also all this public land, what is that? That's actually code for it's all yours, but really you have to ask us permission to go on your land. So basically it's government land, right? So the government begins to own everything. You need to get permission to do anything. So they begin by saying they only want to abolish the property of the bourgeoisie, but eventually they pretty much take everyone's stuff. If you think about what a wealth tax is, was it Elizabeth Warren, I think, is going around talking about a wealth tax. She says, oh, it's only for the super rich. Do you realize that's how they sold America on the income tax? I don't know if any of you work, and whenever you get your paycheck, you look at that paycheck and you see all the taxes that were taken out. See, when the income tax was first passed in America, it was during World War II, and it was supposed to be only the uber rich, like you had to be making like $50 million or $500 million before you had to pay the 1% tax or something like that, right? And it turns out, of course, that since they didn't collect enough money, uh, everyone gets the income tax now. It took them like 3 years to go from only the super rich will get taxed, their income will get taxed, to everyone gets their income tax. Well, so Elizabeth Warren, she sells her idea of the wealth tax for only the uber wealthy. It will extend into everybody. Everyone will have to pay the wealth tax. And you have to understand the way the wealth tax works is that you will own nothing after 10 years. All of your property will be owned by the government. And either she doesn't understand this or she knows, and that's what she wants, because that's what communists want. They want to abolish all private property. Everyone's ability to be able to make choices by themselves. They want to eradicate that. And so now you have to rely on the government for everything, and the government will tell you exactly how you're supposed to live. I know this sounds crazy, but that's what Marx is saying. It's all there. And so the whole thing about collectivism, we're all in this together. No, no. Why are we all in this together? And I guess I haven't talked about Texas, but I will say something. I got into an argument with someone, because I was trying to make a joke. They didn't get the joke. My jokes are probably not that funny. They don't realize I'm joking. But I said basically when the Texas fiasco, they had the cold weather and all the energy went down and a lot of people died, and it was awful. And since it was a really awful situation, I wanted to try to get people to understand why this had happened. And so a friend of mine, who's I think is still a friend of mine, I said, the first rule of government is that you never blame the people who are actually to blame, right? Government always does it. It's all obfuscation. Obfuscation. So when you have a special investigative committee, what is that? Look, when the police, they do something, they say, oh, we're going to start an investigation into ourselves. And their conclusion always is like, we didn't do anything wrong. So when government has a special committee, what do they call that? Special investigator to investigate. What is that? That's code for cover up. Okay, just so you know, next time anyone says anything like that, don't expect anything. It's just going to be cover up. It's just going to be like, oh yeah, we conclude that nothing really happened. Because they delay the release of the report so that's far enough ahead in the future that no one even remembers why they even have this report. Anyway, so my friend was like saying, oh, Texas, the whole thing happened because it was the will of the people to have this green energy stuff going on in Texas. And I was like, the will of the people? What kind of collectivist nonsense is this? Look, if I think, and I know some of you think I'm really crazy prepper, closet prepper, whatever, but it's okay because you don't have to agree with me, right? You don't have to do what I think. And the thing is, when government says, oh, we're going to do this, I'm going to say, yeah, you do that. I'm going to do things my way over here, right? But the problem is when it comes to something like energy, electricity, okay, if the government says this is the way we're going to have electricity, even if I know that that is probably the most boneheaded way to provide electricity, I have no choice. When the government makes that decision, I am stuck. So when my buddy said the will of the people, what people, right? If I lived in Texas, I would have said, I never wanted any of this stuff. You forced me to live under this. And so really it's government incompetence that led to a lot of the issue, right? The whole energy grid is controlled by the government. It's maintained by the government. It wasn't inspected by the government, right? And therefore a lot of the stuff, they were cutting corners, a lot of these deals. And obviously it's not the best company got the deal, the contract, but it was someone's friend. It always is like that. And because it's someone's friend, not the best company, it's going to be shoddy work. It's going to be bad work. And so then everything went down, everything failed. Okay, that's just how it is when government's in charge. Flint, Michigan is another example, right? Why is all the water in Flint, Michigan still contaminated? It's like 3 or 4 years after the fact, because government was in charge. Government decided that they were going to take water from the river. The water turned out to be toxic. They were poisoning everyone in the city. They knew that for a whole year before it all came out. Someone leaked it, someone blew the whistle, and so everyone found out that their water was contaminated, but everyone was still drinking tap water. All the government buildings had water coolers, they were bottled water for a whole year. They didn't even let anyone know. So who went to jail? Obviously no one. I think one person lost their job, but otherwise, and they still haven't fixed the problem, right? And so what am I trying to get you to, why am I saying this? When you get rid of all of individuality, when you get rid of your ability to choose personally what you think is the best solution for yourself, you're stuck. Now all of the government corruption, all the government mistakes are your mistake. You have to live with all of their mistakes. And that is a horrible, horrible life. I mean, think about it. You could be living in Texas and saying, oh my gosh, yeah, this is going to result in total energy failure. So what do you got to do? You got to start making plans so that when the energy does go down, you have a plan B, a backup plan. And that basically is my life, right? I look around, I see the government doing all kinds of crazy things. So what am I going to do? I'm going to make preparations just in case uh, I'm right and things go horrible, then my kids won't starve. My kids won't freeze to death, right? Et cetera, right? And so when you see it coming, that you don't trust government at all, you don't trust anything that they do, especially when they say stuff like, we're all in this together. That basically is basically this code for we're about to totally screw you over. Bend over, please, and then say thank you. No thank you, right? That basically is what I always say. And so call me a prepper if you want. You can call me crazy, tinfoil hat. Where's my tinfoil hat? Whatever, if you want. But if you understand the nature and the character of government, then you'd probably be more like me than my buddy who lives in the South somewhere. All right, so collectivism versus the individual. I am never pro-collectivist. I'm never, oh, we're all in this together. No, what are you talking about? Everyone is responsible for their own life. You make your choices and now you have to live with the consequences. If I don't like your choices, I'm not going to be with you. I'm not going to do the same thing you did. I'm going to do something different. All right, now here's the best part. At the very end of chapter 2, so that's the thing. So he focuses on what a communist is and he explains it. And so essentially they're the government, okay? And so he wants to be the new government. He wants the communists to be able to be the new government after the proletariat revolution. And so if you listen to a lot of the Marxists, what do they want? They want power. They want the power and the ability to be able to control everybody else's life. No, thank you, okay? And that is just basically the worst because no one knows me. They don't know me. They don't know what I want. They don't know what I want out of life. So how are they going to control my life? How are they going to provide the things that I need? Unless it's like, well, see, you were wrong, and so now you got to do it the right way. No, this is America, man. We're free. At least we're supposed to be. Now check this out. At the end of the chapter, he lists 10 things that has to be done when communists come to power, right? So after the proletariat revolution happens, communists are in charge now. Yeah. Okay. Everything is a collectivist nightmare now. So these are the things that we got to do. Now you got to read this list. It's crazy. Number 1, abolition of property. Okay. We'll table that for now. But the wealth tax, that's what that all is slowly taking away. What is the wealth tax? Well, see, it's not income tax. It's not how much you're making. It's not even capital gains tax, like the increase in the value of your property that is taxed. It's not that. It's you have to add up the value of everything that you own, all of it, okay, which is really hard. That means you have to hire someone to come and assess the value of everything that you own and then pay a percentage of that every year, right? And so let's just say you own some Bitcoin, right? And so look at the value of your Bitcoin. I mean, if they could do that, right? and they say, oh, you own 100 million Bitcoin. So then you have to pay 10% tax on that wealth, even though you're not cashing in any of your Bitcoin. Well, what does that mean? That means you have to liquidate 10% of your Bitcoin to pay this wealth tax, right? And so obviously, if you unload 10% of your Bitcoin, then and everyone does, they have to, the price of Bitcoin drops. But let's just say it recovers. Then the next year, you have to do another 10% and another 10%, another 10%. And so eventually you're going to have nothing, right? It's very little. And that's the problem with the wealth tax. It doesn't care about next year. It only cares about now. And that's how short-sighted a lot of these socialists are. They don't see the logical conclusion of a lot of these policies. Okay, so second thing, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax. We have that now. The uber wealthy have to, the more money that you make, the higher the taxes go. Abolition of the right of inheritance. That's the death tax. And believe me, this is pretty bad. I think I forget which state, it always changes. I think Trump got rid of it, now it's back. So basically, whenever someone dies, whatever they have left, you have to tax it heavily, right? Because they shouldn't be allowed to give that money to their kids, right? So they sacrificed, they didn't spend all their money, they saved their money, they tried to invest wisely to give to their kids. No, they're not allowed to do that because it's unfair to all the irresponsible parents who basically spent all their money and living the high life so they have nothing to give to their kids. Not fair to them, right? But these are all voluntary choices that people made. And so you have to live with the consequences of the choices that you made. No, not according to a Marxist. So right of inheritance, got to get rid of that. National Bank, already got that. Federal Reserve, I've mentioned it in a bunch of discussion board posts already, but the Federal Reserve Bank is what controls our currency, not our money, but our currency. There's a difference. And so currency is our gas. This is currency, right? All it is fiat money. It's money because the government says, but it's just paper, okay, with cotton threads in it, okay? But it's not really money. Money is a commodity, okay? But we already have a national bank and they're destroying our currency as we speak with all the stimmy checks and everything. They're inflating it. And so the value of the money is going down. So you won't be able to buy as much. The prices seem to be going higher, but the prices aren't going higher. You need more of this devalued currency to be able to buy the same stuff that you did before. I showed you those things last week. So centralization of the means of communication and transport. Ooh, like Amtrak, SEPTA, all in government control. And that basically is a communistic thing. So we already have that too. Free education for all children in public schools. Yes, I think we already have that as well. Confiscation of all immigrants and rebels. So basically, when you try to leave the country, they have an exit tax, right? So if you want to say, oh, the taxes are too high here, so you move to another country, the government penalizes you for doing that, right? And it used to be $300 to get rid of your citizenship, say you're not an American citizen anymore. I think it's a couple $1,000s now, and it's probably going to be even higher. So in other words, and I've heard some people say that if you try to escape the country, they will tax you heavily, okay? And so yes, we already have this confiscation of immigrants and rebels. Next, equal obligation of all to work. Everyone has to work, except the people in government, right? Because that's a lot of work. No, that's not really work. So everyone else has to work, right? So let's just say you're a mom, you have 3 kids, you got to stay at home. Nope, you can't do that. You got to work. You got to go out to work. And then you say, well, what about my kids? They're not your kids, right? So in the Marxist vision, your kids don't belong to you. And you can hear some of the professors even saying this, right? That's why they feel that they have a right to tell you how you're supposed to raise your kids, because they're not yours. They belong to the collective, to the society, right? I think that bit is in chapter 2 as well. Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state. Better than this, government owning all of these things, which they do actually. When government bails out like Chrysler, that means they now own it. And so to avoid that ownership issue, you basically just control the private businesses through regulations. That's fascism, right? And so we already have this as well. Get rid of the distinction between urban and agrarian areas of society. And so basically you want to get rid of the cities, which I don't know, because of Corona, it seems to have already happened. But that last one, it doesn't really. So basically 9 of the 10 things that the Marxists, or what Marx says we got to do once we come to power, we already have it. And you'll notice that a lot of the people, a lot of professors and say, so they say that this is all capitalism, but there it is in black and white. These are all Marxist policies. This is socialism, right? Not the free market. If it was the free market, then private property would be sacrosanct. Private property would be the most important thing. And you'd be amazed to know that in America, there is very little respect for private property, right? Government feels that it can take it whenever it wants. Also, through eminent domain, if the government feels that you have to sell your property, then you got to sell your property. There is no respect for private property in the United States. So there would be no taxes, and very few taxes, if any. If there is a tax, there would be a consumption tax, right? So when you buy something, you pay a tax, but no other taxes in society. And what does that do? That encourages people to save, and that is how you create wealth in a society, by people saving their money, not spending their money, which is what everyone is preaching these days. No national bank. You don't have, you don't abolish inheritance, etc. You don't have public schools, right? You don't have monopolies on. So all of this stuff in a free market, you don't have any of this stuff, but you do have it in a socialistic, communistic, Marxist society. And again, to reiterate, what's really interesting to me is that when people talk about these institutions, these programs that we see in society, they all call them capitalists, and they're not. And it just amazes me that Marxists, or people who love Marx, can say that with a straight face. It just amazes me. Well, let's see, there's more. Okay, I think I'll do it on my wrap up. So Marx, he advocates a static society. He doesn't want society to change anymore. And as I said, again, it's like basically he wants all of us to live in a society that was mid 1800s, right? And so at the time, industrial revolution, there's a lot of things advancing, a lot of things are changing, technology is improving. He's saying, that's it, that's enough. We've advanced enough. You don't have to advance anymore because it's pretty good right now. I can't imagine it getting any better. Really? And so this is the problem with a Marxist, a problem with socialists. They have no imagination. They have no ability to innovate. They have no creativity because they're all stuck in a box. So Marxism, socialism, is a super box, right? It's this rigid, conservative mindset which does not like progress. I'm pretty harsh. I'm harshing out on Marx primarily because he violates all of the rules that all of the principles of the free market. There's no voluntarism there. It's all coercion. It's all government force to create a static, unchanging society where there's no progress, where you don't need progress, where you don't need better things. And I just don't get it. And why anyone could possibly think that this is a good idea. And so there is no creativity, there is no innovation, there is no increase in productivity, efficiency, lowering of cost. It's just plunder. Whoever has, you take from them. So that's why I affectionately call this, we're all Vikings again, right? We're all Vikings now, right? We plunder each other, right? So I don't have anything, you have stuff, so I'm going to take your stuff because it's not fair that you have stuff. So instead of creating a society where we are competing with each other to outproduce each other, to try to think of better ways of doing things, and we're just going to take from each other. And this is why socialistic, communistic societies always fail, because they no longer produce, right? So the Soviet Union, it collapsed basically because the whole, everything controlled by government did not advance. It did not get any better. And the only reason why people survived as long as they did was because the thriving black market. Government knew it, but then he let it alone, because without it, everyone would starve to death. So a lot of these societies, China, the same, the Great Leap Forward killed millions of people, but no one really seems to want to look at that. But the reality is that it is with freedom, unleashing the creativity, the competition, the desire to have more, unleashing it so that everyone has that freedom, creates wealth and prosperity. Again, the more you try to control it, the poorer people will be. Right. And so since he's all about the labor theory of value, he doesn't understand wages either, as well as a lot of the Marxists as well. They don't understand, economics, wage, value. And so they always screw things up, right? Because they have a really weird, twisted understanding of what economics is. And here just in case I didn't say it, I put it in here. I said, it's funny how people complain about, you know, things that Marx wants, but they always pass them off as capitalist ideas. And so a lot of professors that I know, when they say, "Oh, that's capitalism for you," I'm like, excuse me, that's a socialistic idea. But because most people, because they teach it wrong in the first place, most students don't pick up on that. Hopefully you'll know better now that you've read Manifesto, and I've highlighted certain passages which basically illustrate how he doesn't like colored people. He doesn't like people who are not European, right? He's very nationalistic. He's a sexist as well. He doesn't like the fact that advances in technology allow women to not need men, these kinds of things. And so what's the appeal? I don't know. I don't get it. But maybe some of you could tell me, either in the discussion board or if you swing by office hours later this week. But that's it. And I will probably see you next week.